All right. It is my understanding that it's certainly my first meeting with the BZA since I've arrived in December of last year. So this is somewhat of an organizational meeting. I will call the meeting to order, noting that we do have a quorum, and I ask for a motion by any member for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Next item of business is the election of chair. So at this time, the floor is open for the nominations for the position of chair of the Town of Urbanna-Board of Zoning Appeals.
Did we know these two were not coming?
We have not heard from them. I do know that that you have a quorum.
I get it. I'm
Yeah.
just, it's not like JD, and I'm just, because my motion's going to be for him to be chairman, as he has been in the past.
All right. And if that's fine, then I will continue to run the meeting through the election of the vice chair as opposed to turning the gavel over.
I think we need a second or something.
Oh, I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay, we're trying to elect a chairman to
Yes.
operate the board, to run the board meeting, the remainder of the board meeting.
We have a motion on the floor.
I heard, okay, did you?
Yeah, I made a motion that it be
Oh, you,
JD
okay,
Magnus.
okay,
yes.
all right.
As
We have a
he-
motion.
As he has been.
If you're waiting for a second, I would second.
Second, okay. Are there any other nominations? Any others? Any others? Haven't asked three times. Is there a motion for Mr. Magnus to be the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the Town of Urbana?
The motion's been made.
Motion, I'm sorry,
Vote.
for the vote. Is there a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, Mr. Magnus. At this point, I would normally hand him the gavel and let him run the rest, but I will take that through to the election of the vice chair. Is there a nomination for the position of vice chair?
I nominate Mr. Hall.
Mr. Hall.
Second.
Have a second. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other I thought you might want to nominate yourself. Hearing none, then we'll close nominations. All those in favor of Mr. Hall for vice chair, please
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That was your opportunity.
Yeah.
All those who abstain, no abstentions. Mr. Hall, I am happy to turn the gavel over to you.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Okay, so is there an agenda for the public meeting for this?
Just do the usual, if you'll call the public hearing to order for the variance request.
Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order for the variance request 2024 VAR 01 Riddick. And
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What I will do is present the staff overview on the report, and then the applicant will have an opportunity, and then the public will have an opportunity. I will note that this is a public hearing held under the authority of Section 15.2, 2204, Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended. The necessary public notices have been given, and the application material has been and is available for review here in the office. This evening's request, 2024 Variance 1, is at on Watling Street. It's Christopher and Crystal D. Riddick. The applicant requests permission to add to an existing residence with an existing 10-foot front yard setback where a 40-foot setback is required, and add to the existing residence a 12-foot rear yard setback where 25 feet is required, and construct a proposed shed of 35 feet from the front front yard setback where 40 feet is required. The parcels identified as 175A, Middlesex County Tax Map, Identification Map Number 20A. The zoning is R1. This particular piece of property is in several overlay districts: the Historic District, the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area, which covers pretty much the entire town, and is also impacted by the floodplain area. The use is residential. It's primarily been used as a short-term commercial rental, and the adjacent uses are all residential. It is a developed lot, and the improvements proposed will alter the impervious surface under the Chesapeake Bay area regulations, particularly the resource management area. The statutory criteria is set out in your staff report. The town code sections, the town ordinance at 1711-8B 1 through 6 in state law establishes the findings necessary for the board to grant a variance. It should be noted, in granting a variance, the board may impose such conditions regarding the location, character, and other features of the proposed structure or use as it may deem necessary in the public interest, and may require a guarantee or bond to ensure that compliance. Full sets of the plans are available here. I think the applicant will have some diagrams for you as well. The owner submitted building plans which could not be approved because they do not meet the requirements of the Urbana Town Code. The relevant town code sections are stated at 17-4.2, 5, 4, and 6. Also critical is the definition of the yard, front, found under 1713.2. Now that's all the definitions. And relatedly, street or road and lot depth. And I've enclosed copies of those with the staff report. The property is elongated on a north-south axis, but is accessed along its easternmost property line, thus the lot's depth is inadequate. This is due to prior subdivision and Board of Zoning Appeals action. The existing structure came to be via an erroneously issued zoning permit. The applicant has requested 3 separate variances, and while each one must be considered and voted on separately, staff does not find the necessary factual basis has been met to grant any of the variances requested. First, the hardships are self-imposed. The applicant was or should have been aware of the conditions of the lot when it was purchased, and that the lot and the existing structure are both non-conforming. Non-conforming structures are not permitted to be enlarged. Second, the applicant is able to use the property for a residential purpose. Third, there is nothing unique about the property that would warrant the granting of a variance. Many properties in Urbana are similarly situated and have such similar slopes leading to some body of water, so the hardship is not unique. Now at this point, what I'd like to do is turn over to the slideshow, PowerPoint. And so this is going to be a bit of a review for any and all variances. Next slide, please. All right, so variance, it skipped one. Go back, please. There you go. The variance is basically, it's the applicant's burden to prove the various criteria are met. Now the next one. A variance is a reasonable deviation from the provisions regulating what are necessarily called bulk requirements, things that you can measure, such as size of the building, height, area, bulk, or in this case, the location of the building. Next, please. A variance is appropriate when the application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Next, please. Or alleviates a hardship due to a physical condition related to the property or improvements that were there before the ordinance was approved. Next slide, please. Or the variance alleviates a hardship or granting of a reasonable modification on behalf of a person with a disability. Next slide, please. And this little small print here, but these are the findings. The property was acquired in good faith, will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent or nearby properties. The condition of the property is not so general or recurring in nature as to make reasonably practical the formation of a general regulation as an amendment to the ordinance. Does not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted, and the relief or remedy sought is not available through a special exception process. Okay. Now for tonight's issues. You have 3 variances. The first one is for the encroachment on the front yard by the structure, by the main structure, the house. The second one is for the main structure's encroachment in the rear yard. And the third one is the encroachment of the accessory, the proposed accessory building onto the front yard. All right, picture's worth 1,000 words. This is the property as it was platted at the time of the conveyance. And this next one's going to be a little bit busier. All right, this is pretty much a markup of what's on the board over here in the corner. What you have there in the sort of the highlighted area, the purple and green, that is the actual proposed addition. To the right of that, you have the existing structure. To the north of that, or up, the purple, that's the proposed accessory building. The orange line, it's not coming across, I don't think it's coming across as orange here, but that line right there, thank you, Martha, is showing the northernmost property line of the subject property, which has a privacy fence all across the length of it. And then to the right of that, you have up in the upper right-hand corner, the notation's kind of hard to read, but that's the existing 20-foot right-of-way. All right, next item, please. When you apply the 40-foot setback on the front and the 25-foot setback on the rear, that's what's left of the buildable area. Okay? Next slide, please. Quick locational map as to where you're talking about. And then here's an aerial. Next one, please. And the subject property's been circled. And then the next one is a little bit closer. And if you look just to the right of the structure, you'll see sort of a, you'll have to forgive me, reddish-brown paved area or trail path. That is the 20-foot easement that comes down all the way from Watling Street all the way down to the water. All right. Next one, please. These are just some records out of the Commissioner of Revenue in terms of the size of the building. The next one will give you some of the dimensions. It does note a steep slope on the property, but as noted earlier, that's not unique to a lot of these. The next two slides, please, are more background information on the property. Another locational map. And then one more. This kind of looks like a football play diagram, but it's to label where the side yards are, where the backyard is, where the existing shed is, and that's not depicted on this. And this is not obviously survey accurate because it shows the existing residence sitting on the property line. And with that, we're at the end. The last one just kind of goes back to those highlighted areas. So as you discuss this, you can reference north, south, east, west, the different color areas. There's a long history on this piece of property. It's had several reviews by several owners for various things under the Historic Architectural Review. Again, we're kind of here because back in the 90s, the Board of Zoning Appeals allowed this lot to be cut off. And it is a very shallow lot. There was the belief that the width of the lot was parallel to Watling Street. The record of that BZA clearly states that one of the issues was overuse of the 20-foot right-of-way to access the property. That makes it the front yard by those definitions in the ordinance. I'd be happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Was that the ordinance in as of the 90s?
Yes,
It was.
yes.
When was the 40-foot setback come into play? Is that new or?
It's in the current ordinance as I know it to be.
understand it's current.
Oh, you're
but-
going, okay, you're asking about the prior
Yeah,
ordinance?
because
Mhm.
yeah, I am, because I, there's so many houses, including mine,
Mhm.
that don't sit back 40 feet in this town.
That they're all non-conforming.
You're right.
They're all
You're gonna
non-conforming.
Make me tear down my house?
No, because it's non-conforming. It's non-conforming.
Yeah.
And the structure should not have been placed where it was. And there's a record that the zoning administrator at the time admitted that they placed it at the wrong spot. They viewed that
Are we talking about the little?
the existing, the little
house?
frame
But
structure.
Wasn't that, when was that thing built? Because I've been here since '86, and I think that house has been there since before I got here.
I think the applicant will be able to tell you,
Thank
it
you.
wasn't,
I
it wasn't
just
built.
don't know.
He actually moved it from an adjoining piece of property and then rehabbed it. And he can
Gotcha.
certainly
Okay.
speak to
Yeah.
the development history on the structure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps. Okay, so,
Mr. Cost, essentially, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I address that?
Oh, of course.
This lot was created by this Board of Zoning Appeals in the 1990s, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And okay, and it became a non-conforming lot under the ordinance at that time? Or was it a conforming lot at that time?
It was at the lot originally was everything from Watling Street all
Right.
the way back to the water.
Yeah,
When they made the division,
yeah.
I think that's when it became a non-conforming lot.
And within the records of the Board of Zoning Appeals at that time, what was the stated purpose of the Board of Zoning Appeals for creating a non-conforming lot?
From what I can gather from the minutes, and those, I can add those to the record if you like, and get you copies of those. It was differences of opinion between some of the neighbors and the applicant, but at the end of the day, the Board of Zoning Appeals ruled that they met the criteria, that it would be a hardship for the owner at that time, Mr. Pond, to be able, not to be able to divide his property for an additional use of an additional residence on the property. He indicated that he was thinking about that being his retirement home, and then I don't know what happened after that. It went into different hands.
Okay. And you mentioned in your staff report that there were a couple of other Board of Zoning Appeals actions that were improper?
Well, when this house was located, or the building, the
Okay.
existing building,
Yeah.
was located onto the property.
Mhm.
The zoning administrator at that time viewed it as that where the 10-foot is to the right of the building. He viewed that as a side yard.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Okay. He interpreted, and I'm going to walk over for a minute just to point it out. This reads existing 15-foot utility easement. He read the utility easement as a point of access. Now, had that been a dedicated right-of-way, that would have made the front yard, and we'd only be talking about the storage building right now. But the record on the old BZA in the hearing is, it was always intended that the 20-foot right-of-way would be the point of access.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the BZA granted a lot width variance. I don't know, I do not know if they were anticipating that a right-of-way would be put in, but one was never put in.
for Mr. Pond, all the way back to that?
Yeah,
Okay.
a right-of-way line here with the easement, where the easement is now.
Right.
I don't know if they were speculating that they would put in a right-of-way, that the record's not clear on that. The
Right.
record is clear that they recognized the 20-foot right-of-way.
Gotcha. So, okay, so, but you also mentioned that a couple of years ago, when Mr. Riddick started this, he got approval somehow, because he didn't get it from us.
It was a mistake was made.
So,
This is an
but,
error on the part of town staff. I'm sorry, Martha.
Yes.
Apologize.
no, you're fine, no.
This
I
is
was
an error
just
on the part of
curious.
town
Error on
staff at that
error on the
time.
part-time staff at that time, yeah.
Okay, so, but then my question becomes this. I know a mistake was made, but how do we go whoops now and try to take it back?
We don't take it back.
Okay.
We don't take that, let's be clear about that.
Yeah,
We
thank
don't
you.
take it back.
Okay.
No, that's akin to making you move your house back 40 feet.
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed.
In current Pearland, we have to eat that one.
Okay.
But you don't have to add on to it.
Do we know what that looked like when it was approved? Erroneously approved?
I'm
Do we
going to
know
have to
what-
say it probably looked a lot like what you're seeing there. It just showed the location of the existing frame
know.
residence being,
I'm sorry, probably can't talk to him yet. can
well,
we?
yeah, you'll get a
Sorry.
chance.
Okay.
But again, the only, I've spoken to the staff member, and what they said was they misread the utility easement as the right-of-way easement.
No, I get,
As the
get
right-of-way.
how the
yeah,
mistake was
yeah,
made.
Yeah,
It's just that,
but you have to eat it,
yeah,
yeah.
so,
But you don't have to compound it.
gotcha, that's why I'm curious to know what they approved then, exactly.
Yeah.
So that we, can eliminate some of this and figure out what we are here for.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Interesting. If there are no other questions, I would recommend time for the applicant.
Maybe I do have a question. It seems to me that, and I'm kind of new at this, but going through the information that I was given, it's like, based on what I understand about this, we are precluded from allowing it. I mean, I'm not sure how we can even entertain the prospects of this when it says clearly that we cannot do it. I mean, by law. Am I wrong?
That's the position I have, but at the same time, the applicant has the opportunity to be heard.
Okay.
But at the same time, you placed in the staff report, the Supreme Court of Virginia has determined that the threshold question for the BZA, and it talks about that, and essentially, the bottom line is, if the answer is negative, the BZA has no authority to go further.
Right.
Okay.
That's,
Is that what you were referring
Yes.
to? Me too, okay.
okay, so, all right, then I guess we need to hear from property owner Chris.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for being here. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to hear my case. I've provided a packet for each of you with pertinent information regarding the property in question. You will find original surveys, site plans, and some pictures of the property. If you'll indulge me just a minute, some of you know me and some of you don't, I believe. But for those who don't know me, my name is Chris Riddick, and this is my wife, Crystal. I have lived in Middlesex County most of my adult life, and I've been coming to this area since I was born. I owned an architecture business in Urbana for over 10 years, and I am proud to have left a mark on the town's homes and businesses through my designs. I was also a local realtor, and I was always so excited to share Urbana with folks looking to buy property. My family roots are also run deep here, too. My grandmother, Catherine Burton, was born in the Burton House at the end of Watling Street, and my grandfather, Roland Riddick, was the Methodist minister back in town in the 1930s. He and my father instilled a love for Urbana and the Rappahannock River in me that I carry to this day. When I found a little piece of land on Urbana Creek in 2019, I knew that my dream of living in town on the water could possibly come true. I purchased the property after careful consideration, and my plan was to build a small home until I can afford to build an addition, making it into a permanent residence for my family. I sited a tiny cottage on the eastern side, 10 feet away from the property line, so that the remainder of the land could be utilized for the future addition. I salvaged the building for my neighbors Steve and Betty Connolly's property next door. I worked with the town zoning administrator at the time to make sure the house was within the setbacks and that I was following the zoning ordinance. I even agreed not to build within the RPA, even though the lot was technically grandfathered into the Chesapeake Bay Act. The utility plan was approved in 2020, and the site plan was approved in 2022. The cottage was built soon after. This summer, I submitted a proposed site plan for the addition and quickly met resistance from the newly hired zoning administrator, Mr. Costin. Soon after submitting that proposal, Mr. Costin reoriented my property 90 degrees by deeming the access easement over my neighbor's property as a street. This reorientation changes the playing field mid-game and creates an unnecessary hardship for me on this site. The 52-foot wide buildable area that I was approved for suddenly becomes 6 feet wide and unbuildable. This is an unnecessary hardship, and it was created by the zoning administrator's interpretation of the zoning ordinance. I respectfully but strongly disagree with the current zoning administrator's assertion that the 8-foot wide private gravel driveway to the side of my property is the front of my property. This property is and has always been oriented long ways from north to south, with the front yard facing Watling Street. A town-approved Bay Act plan from 2003 shows a proposed dwelling on the parcel and a north-south orientation. This was the same Bay Act plan that I based my decision on buying this property from. Both my town-approved concept utility plan and site plans from 2020 and 2022 show a proposed dwelling in a north-south orientation. These were presented to the town administrator at the time, the zoning official at the time, and it was all approved. But even if you don't agree with the zoning administrator's brand-new orientation, that doesn't change the fact that I have a vested right in my approved site plan approved in 2022. This vested right is upheld in the Virginia State Code 15.2-2307 and protects property owners for situations just like this. The zoning administrator concedes that the existing structure came to be via an erroneously issued zoning approval, yet it was approved, and no objections were made within a 30-day period after being submitted. This site plan is valid for 5 years upon approval, and I hereby request to develop within the site plan's approved setbacks. Furthermore, I acted on guidance from the town zoning official. If that guidance is now deemed incorrect, that itself is a hardship. Additionally, I'm requesting a variance to construct a 12 by 28-foot shed on wooden skids in the northwest corner of the property. Currently, I have a small plastic shed and carport in the space, and I would like to replace it with something more attractive and in keeping with the neighborhood. The shed would be no closer than 8 feet to the neighboring party line, per the zoning ordinance, and is mostly blocked from view by a 6-foot-tall privacy fence to the north and west. The shed would not block any view or cause any circulation or access issues with neighboring properties. I'm not asking for an unreasonable departure from the town zoning ordinance, nor am I asking for an addition that is incompatible with the character of the neighborhood. I am simply asking for reasonable relief to develop my property and for my vested right in the approved site plan to be honored. In the packet I've given you are pictures taken around the property. As you can see, the neighborhood is a mix of different sized homes, all with sheds, garages, and other outbuildings. Most of these are right up to the property lines on the sides, front, and rear. Most properties in the neighborhood contradict the setbacks laid out in the ordinance, but that's what gives the neighborhood its unique Urbanna character. In my opinion, what I'm proposing is very much in keeping with this character and contributes to the overall aesthetic while adhering to the current zoning ordinance. So in closing, I have met the requirements to grant a variance in all 3 instances before you. These variances are reasonable deviations from the strict application of the zoning ordinance. The need for this variance is not shared by any other property. This variance does not change the use of my property. Furthermore, this property was obtained in good faith, and I did not create this unnecessary hardship. The granting of these variances will not substantially be detrimental to adjacent or nearby properties. It does not create a situation that would change the zoning ordinance. It does not change the use of the property, and this relief is not available through special exception processes provided by the ordinance. These are the requirements for a variance to be granted, and in my opinion, my case meets them all. I hope you feel the same way. I've given a lot of my life and my wife's life to the development of this property, and I've put a lot of thought into it and a lot of my heart and soul. And I'm sorry. I want to be a part of Urbanna. We both want to be part of Urbanna, and we've worked hard to get here. So, sorry for that, but I've given you a lot of information, so I would like to ask my lovely assistant to come up and illustrate using some visual aids. Crystal?
So my name is Crystal Riddick. I'll just give you a little bit of brief background on me. I am a pediatric nurse at MCV in the emergency trauma and diagnostic radiology. So I work with little kids, and their learning style is the same as mine. I'm a visual learner. Kudos to y'all, because all of this is over my head if I just had to listen to it. So I'm just going to show you just some brief, quick things. I mean, you've got them in your packet, but just coming from us. So in 2022, this was the site plan, and again, I'm not going to have the verbal, like, legal jargon. But this was the site plan that was approved by the zoning board at the time, which showed our entire, this was the buildable area that we requested. When we actually built, we found that little cottage right next door, the little shed. And Chris thought it was a great idea to bring it over and tiny house the poo out of it and revamp it, and it's been wonderful. And I'm sorry, it's just in black and white. The existing house is here, so you can see it's much smaller than the original approval that we got. Our goal was always to, in a year or two, when we saved up enough money and we were ready to kind of retire to Urbana, to add on to that property. It is within, Chris made sure, all of the setbacks from a north to south, which is what we were approved. It does not encroach into the Chesapeake Bay Act. Just to give you kind of a little heads up, this is kind of what the final project will look like once we're done. This little piece right here is the existing cottage that is currently on the property. We want to build this addition to complement. It will have all the same windows, same trim, same character, in keeping with Urbana. I don't think you have a picture of the shed, but the shed,
Oh, it's in the pack.
oh, they do.
we
The
did.
shed would also be to match the house, the trim, the coloring, the windows, everything, so it would give a nice cohesive to the neighborhood. We've seen wonderful things since we've moved in. With Lisa Carter has really done a beautiful job with the beautiful yellow Victorian, bringing that back to life, and it has been wonderful. Steve and Betty are amazing neighbors. Terry is an amazing neighbor. We have felt very welcomed. We have had some hardships with this lot in developing it, but the neighbors have been really supportive to us and encouraging. So I don't really have a whole lot else to say, but you do?
Oh, just, thank you.
Okay.
That was great. Yeah, and to follow up with Crystal's comments, it has been a struggle, but it also has been wonderful, our project in Urbana. And it was always something that we wanted to develop and continue and to make better and better. So that's why we're here. So with that, I think I've taken up enough of your time, and I thank you for your time. And I thank you for your consideration of my case. And I hope that I've addressed any concerns that you might have. If you have any questions, I'll try to do the best to answer them. Thank you.
Mr. Hall, can I ask a question? Of course. The renovated single-bedroom home, according to the Commissioner of the Revenue, that's on the property, what's that currently being used for?
Right now, it's just a residence, a cabin. But we have been Airbnb-ing it
Oh,
in the
okay,
past
so
year.
you do have a use for it, correct?
I have a use for it. I have a use.
Okay,
And that's basically to build up the kitty to afford an addition.
okay. So there's, by not expanding the home, if the Board of Zoning Appeals were to deny your request, you would continue to do that, I assume?
It's kind of, the jury is out on what we're going to do if this doesn't go through.
Okay,
And the advice of my attorney that I've talked to, I'm prepared to go appeal it all the way up, so.
Okay.
And I know this, the legality of this lot was actually appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court of Virginia by the former neighbors. So it's had its day in court for a while.
The lot there has been
Yes, sir. Benton Pollock and Kelly Pollock actually appealed it, contested the legality of the lot all the way up to the Supreme Court, and lost.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I clarify?
Yes,
Sure.
please. Oh,
The Pollocks did,
I'm chairman of a couple boards.
you can, wrong board.
No. Sorry.
The applicant's correct. The Pollocks did appeal the zoning, the Board of Zoning Appeals decision back in the 90s. It was heard, it was not even heard, it was ruled in the Circuit Court of Middlesex for based on the record, that the decision could stand. That decision was appealed to the Supreme Court, asking for a reconsideration by the Circuit Court. The Supreme Court did not grant that petition. So at the end of the day, the decision stood. You know, that's one that you,
So they took to the Supreme Court and lost.
The appeal to the circuit court,
in the
circuit court said, lot's okay.
lots of, did
For
not.
subdivision,
Did not
and that
have,
was
did
appealed
not
up.
have a hearing.
Okay.
Did not have a hearing, looked at the evidence, the packet from both sides and said, nothing here. The Pollocks appealed that to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Also, not in a hearing setting, no opinion was written, they just refused to hear it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, could I see the drawing again that your lovely assistant had previously?
Of the proposed site plan or the?
No, the one that was
Original.
approved, the original.
That was gonna be
Mr.
on.
Are these things in the handout that you gave?
Yes.
Because we do need, they are?
Yep.
Exactly,
Mhm.
all the renderings?
Yep,
Okay, because we do need copies. I don't
they should be in the front.
We don't have the renderings, we don't have the profiles.
Oh, the renderings? Oh, well, that was just something that I grabbed from, I mean, that's not that's an architectural issue. It's not a zoning issue.
But it's being presented, so we have to have it for the record.
Copy. We'll get it to you.
That'd be great.
Okay, so originally, it was, your plan was approved.
Yep.
And when was that?
2022
Okay,
by John Gill.
okay, so it was approved, you got approval on that to build what you want to do now.
Within this footprint. So
Everything that
this
you're
is
gonna.
just a kind of a mass within the 10-foot, 40-foot setback.
Okay, so everything you're proposing to do, so far as the main building is concerned, goes within that footprint.
Yes, sir.
And what has happened that has changed the reason for that being approved the way that it was?
Mr. Costin.
My interpretation, based on the right-of-way, where the right-of-way comes into the property.
And so, when I think I was saying in my narrative, I proposed a preliminary site plan to Mr. Costin. He rejected it based on some of his opinions and findings, and then suggested that I appeal his decision separately from applying for a variance. So I appealed his decision, at the same time applied for a variance. So that was $300, $600, and that's why I'm wondering why we're not talking about that.
I wish we could have an overlay of the size of that versus what your proposed is, so we know what the actual area is that got approved versus what you've got now. Sorry, I'm trying.
As far
No,
as,
that's okay.
as
You know-
far as what is existing?
What the approval of that, if we could overlay it on this, so we know what you're approved for. I can't, I'm visual too, I can't see
You
it.
could maybe just show us with your finger.
Do you know what size, what the,
So the
Footage?
The existing cottage is approximately 350 square feet. It's a tiny, tiny little cottage.
I'm
This,
just gonna hold up this one too.
this new cottage extends off the end of the existing cottage. I'll call it an addition. 16 feet and goes no further than the 100-foot setback
okay,
and no further than the 40-foot front setback here. And this is what I was going by for the last 3 years, 3 years,
right.
you know, that I had this area to build upon. And, you know, I couldn't afford to build all this. So I did what I could. And knowing that I had this approved area.
But you didn't have any drawings for a house or anything at that time when you had that approved?
No.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
gotcha.
But
Okay,
this was just the approved footprint.
right.
It's generic, I mean, but it served the purpose.
Well, it is what it is,
Mhm.
right? So. I'm
But I
not sure-
can say, and I don't know if it's relevant for our case, but the person that we bought the property from had an entire house that they wanted to build in the same footprint.
Mhm.
That was approved.
Correct. That's in the Bay Act plan, and that one actually stretched down the hill into the RPA.
Wow,
They had an approved, and number one, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to encroach in the RPA. I'm about the environment. I'm about the bay. I'm about water quality. I didn't want to do that. And two, it's expensive. It's expensive to build in the RPA. I know that. That's kind of my line of work. So
so
Given
all
what-
that right there fits in that same little square that you were approved?
yes,
Oh, it's not really a square, it's a rectangle.
right.
Sorry. So, okay, and we're sure of that?
No, we're not.
Okay.
Because what I'm hearing is, I'm confused that what was approved in '22 has been changed. And what we're trying to figure out here is, in '22, the applicant said it was Mr. Gill. And I think Mr. Cobb was the zoning administrator at the time.
I don't know.
So, we, you know, if that is the case, and if I may, if that's the case, what Mr. Reddick has stated before was the Supreme Court case. I don't, you know, I think that's just part of the issue in terms of the history of the lot.
Right.
There's no way around this. The BZA in the 90s recognized the 20-foot right-of-way as the access point. Why they did the lot width thing the way they did, I have no idea. I think what's critical, and the board may want to consider a deferral, is to give us time to see if we can find written documentation that the plan was approved. A submitted plan is not an approved plan. An approved plan that's altered is not an approved plan. So we might need to take a deferral on this after the public hearing, and
Right.
perhaps the board might want to consider continuing to another night for a decision. It's just so we can put facts into the, you know,
Right.
find out whether or not there was an approval.
Well, okay,
But
and I
it's got-
agree,
but
I agree thoroughly
Yeah, it's
with
gotta be a
deferring all the
document,
things.
yeah.
I just, in my little brain, I'm just thinking if they got the approval, and we said we can't say whoops and take it back for this, and all that fits in there, then really, why are we even, I know he's changed his plans
Okay.
for it.
You have to kind of break this down. Is there was a plan approved and a permit issued for the building to be moved off of the adjacent property onto his property. That's one approval process. What
Okay,
the,
I
what the
just
applicant
didn't
is
think
saying is
in
that was
the whole-
part of a
I
bigger
didn't think
project
in
that was
this whole
approved.
thing. I don't care that he moved it, he was approved to have a building here, right?
That- We don't know. We don't know. That's why I'm saying we need to go back and look at the record, because
What?
submitting a plan and having it approved,
How did we get a building permit if I didn't have an approved site plan?
from what I understand, you have a building permit for what you built, for the for
You
what's
cannot
the-
get a building permit in Middlesex County unless you have an approved site plan from
That's
the zoning
correct.
administrator.
That's correct.
So the one follows the other.
You're absolutely
And it
correct.
was Mr. Gill who approved the site plan, then he retired, and then Mr. Kime came in
Okay.
and dealt with the project.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my recommendation is going to be hear out the rest of the public hearing, close the public hearing, continue until we can pull the records and see to what extent, which plan was approved and how much footprint was incorporated.
Wasn't this part of the research that I paid $600 for to have this?
So I don't think
all
you paid
the-
$600. I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I did.
Well,
$600 for the
Okay.
appeal and for a variance.
okay.
Separate applications, and 3 months of my life
And-
worrying about this and stressing about this.
Okay, and when the application was, his first application was made, it came in under an application for a variance. But in the narrative, he was asking for an appeal. That's 2 bites of the apple under one application. That's not how it works.
You advised me to make an appeal.
I did, and
All
you
right.
basically,
Calm, let's be calm.
and you also wrote me and told me the last thing you were going to do was follow my advice. So,
But he
here we
went
are.
ahead and filed for the appeal.
He had filed.
And it's not in this procedure.
Okay. That's going to be my recommendation, is finish up the public hearing, take all the comment, and then let us pull what we can find in terms of minutes. And we can reach back to Mr. Gill, we can reach back to Mr. Kime and see what we can find.
I just have one more thing to say, and I'm a simple person. This is our property, okay? This is our property. For better, for worse, for what Mr. Costin is saying. Within the north-south is what we were granted in 2022. We have a 5-year right. This addition meets every setback for Urbana. From the Chesapeake Bay, from the side, from the front of the yard, from the side of the yard. It fits within our legal building as of what was deemed us in 2022 by the board. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so I think it makes sense for us to get a little bit more information. I would like to know that you were approved for that whatever rectangular space in there. And if that was approved, then we can document that, which it sounds like we have an issue with documenting whether that was actually the case. So if that was the case, then I think that definitely changes the complexion to a certain extent of this. But, you know, I know you don't want to, you know, deal with more time and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's in our best interest to do that.
I think it's important we get it right. And to get it right, we need more information.
I would agree.
And
So-
what I would like
Yeah.
to see is a chronology on this. What actions were taken, and who took them, so that we can better understand this and we can see, because I've got a site plan here, but it's not a stamped approved site plan. Do you have a letter that says it's approved?
I have a house that says it's approved.
Well, you have a house, but you don't have you know, typically, and
Well, the poor
I've
fellow
been-
retired, and another guy retired, so.
I understand. I've lived here, and I've seen them come and go. I've also been a county administrator, town manager, a zoning administrator, and I've always seen a site plan with a stamp for approval. I don't see that here.
Do we have a stamp in Urbana for approval?
Well, that's a good question, and if we don't, we should have.
Exactly. I think, yeah.
You know, and what I would say is, what we're dealing here with as a Board of Zoning Appeals right now is cleaning up a mess that was created by prior administrations that weren't really clear on documentation, interpretation of codes, and have put us in a position, a difficult position, because we have a property owner. You've made an investment in your property. We appreciate that. I appreciate that. I also know as a property owner, I wanted to do some things on my property I couldn't do and was advised not to because I probably wouldn't get a variance approved. But I'm not sure about that now. So, you know, What I'm saying is, it's been inconsistent, I think, in the past, the interpretation of the codes and how they've been laid out. It's unfortunately our responsibility right now to help sort through this and get it right, because what we do now will have an impact on future applications.
Absolutely. Well
I
said.
understand.
And
I understand
again,
that.
we're trying to help. We're trying to figure out what you were approved for in the original site plan, okay? And whatever they need to provide and go back and find all of that chronological data will be most helpful to us, so then we can help figure this out.
Well, I understand that, and I appreciate your thoroughness, but understand that this costs me time and money. And I don't live here, and I want to live here, I think, but it costs me time and money. We both had to take time off of work today. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting for months, and I've paid money, and I put a lot of work into this. So I don't understand the disconnect between what I applied for, what everything was spelled out, and what we're talking about right now. Do you understand my frustration?
Yep.
Absolutely.
And why is your town administrator not prepared?
Excuse me, the town attorney would like to comment. May she comment?
Oh, but yes.
Andrea Gerard, I'm the town attorney. I cannot advise the BZA or give legal advice to the BZA. But I would offer that if the applicant wants a decision this evening, I think that's something that the BZA could do. The applicant bears the burden of proof. And if the applicant does not have proof of the action that he is referencing, I mean proof in writing, and he doesn't want to continue the hearing, then the board would have to vote on what is in front of it tonight. And the board can choose either way.
And my suggestion would be to conclude the public hearing after everybody's had a chance to speak. Conclude the public hearing and then come back, give the staff some time to do this research and share the documents with the board and the applicant, and then come back before, as soon as possible, but before November 24. But I know you want it sooner. I understand that.
Well, can I have a bit of clarification? So what the attorney is saying is that we can defer this and get more information, or we can proceed with the three variance requests that I'm proposing tonight. And
Based on the evidence that's been presented this evening in writing.
based on the evidence that's been received tonight in writing.
Yeah, well, I think
So
it
whose
might,
choice is that?
I think it might be in your best interest to wait. Understand that you've got a lot invested here in terms of time and money and emotionally. But if we make a decision based solely on what we have that we can confirm right now, I don't think it's going to be in your best interest. I mean, that's my thought.
I would agree.
I would agree as well.
So the fact that we have an approved site plan from 2022 that has a 5-year means nothing.
They're saying that it's not in front of them with a stamp on it from the town.
Wait, look, and please, I know that the emotional part of this is difficult, but we're in a tough spot here, and we have to do our duty as the zoning appeals group. So we don't have any choice. We've got to try to get all of the information that we can get in order to make the right decision. So,
Thought we would have that tonight.
okay, Well, we can make a decision.
No, sir. That's, if it's your recommendation. But I would like to say one more thing, if I may.
Okay.
I've been made aware that Kelly Pollock is on the board. Is that true?
I don't know.
She is on the board, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would be a conflict of interest if she.
That is one reason she's not sitting here this evening.
Copy.
Thank you.
I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I think we need to make a motion to close the.
Oh,
Call for
We-
public comments first.
oh,
Anybody from-
that's right.
Oh, sorry.
Public comments. Did anybody sign up for, okay. Mary,
I'm on the fence about whether to wait until the continuance of
And you have 3 minutes.
hearing. Okay. All right, Mary Hanson, 240 Watling Street, citizen, neighbor, town council member. I'm here as a citizen. I'm not an immediate adjacent neighbor. I think all of you know that. I'm one property over, but I have the biggest view of the Riddick property. You've heard the variance history, so I'm not going to go into that, except to say that I feel that it's inadvisable to have multiple variances, especially on some of these subdivided properties that should probably never have been subdivided, and that any decision that you make will have an impact on the future of some of those parcels. For example, 5 parcels to the east of Mr. Riddick's property on Urbana Creek, that tiny sliver to the east of the Gobush Lister House and adjacent to the Urbana-Town Bridge. It's just an example. They did not subdivide it. That is not their fault, but they are on one of these pieces of property that at one time was deemed unbuildable and then buildable. When the Riddicks were in conflict with the adjacent neighbors to the north, the Tunings, and sought permission for Dominion Power to use the utility right-of-way that ran through their yard, I tried to work with both the Riddicks and the Tunings to resolve their differences so that the Riddicks could make use of the small bit of land with the nice view on Urbana Creek, and they did ultimately do that. My view changed a bit as a result of the HARB meeting on October 26, 21, a meeting that I attended. I have the minutes of that meeting, and they can be entered into the record. Let me grab them.
I'll get them later. I'll get them later.
Okay, no, there's something I want to reference in it. Okay, and in that meeting, HARB approved their application, and one of the things that was assured was that the structure would be painted with an approved historic color 149 Buxton blue, and the trim would be painted in white. And it was granted on that basis. The minutes show that, but that is not the color of the building. It is a bright Caribbean blue that Chris apparently told Roy Keim, then the zoning administrator, not John Gill, was just the primer color and that it would be painted the correct color. It never was. And this began what I see as a pattern of not doing what he says he's doing. If inclined to approve the variance, I'm asking that you put written conditions on everything that they say that they will do that you are approving, because otherwise you may have difficulty enforcing those. Again, I believe that it's bad practice to grant variance upon variance. And when exceptions and other variances have already been granted, that it's best practice to uphold the town code, and that when granting variance, you must realize that it creates a fairness problem when future variances are requested, and then where do we stop? Thank you.
okay. I assume there's nobody else that is signed up to speak. So do I have a motion to,
Close the public
You
hearing.
want to close public hearing?
oh, so I closed the public hearing first. Okay, so the public hearing is now closed. And there's an agenda item for other matters. I don't know of any, oh, that's for you.
So you've taken care of some of your organizational things this evening. One of the other changes I've tried to bring in is to have a set deadline for applications. That way we'll know so many days out that you have to have a meeting. Helps you make helps you preserve your calendar. I've looked over the ordinance. It just basically says when you all need to meet, you need to meet. Do you all want to establish for lack of a better word, a policy? The Planning Commission has done this. For their zoning issues like special uses, rezonings, amendments, to basically say, hey, we're going to set a certain day for our deadline on applications, with the anticipation of being processed within 60 to 90 days. That's one of the other matters I have for you is do you want to have a set day that we put on the calendar to say, when we're meeting with people, to say, okay, you have to get your application in by this day so that we can do the advertising and whatnot. That's an operational management decision for the board that the staff will live with, whatever you all want to do. We just recommend that there be a date that we can tell people, hey, got to get it in by this
That's
date.
just an application.
Mhm.
We're an appeals board.
Right.
So it would be more if the application is denied, right?
No, we're talking about when they want to come in and if they're asking for a variance or they're asking for an appeal, that, okay, our cutoff date for this month is the third Wednesday. I'm just throwing something out. The third Wednesday. And then that way we can work with you like we did on this evening's hearing as to when do you want to have this, when do you want to have this? We've got a hard application. We know that we've got to take care of it within the next 90 days.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm all for structure
Mhm.
and process, but how many appeals do you think this board, I've been on it for a while. Martha, you've been on it for a while. Mr.
Yeah.
Hall, you've been on it for a
I
while.
have
Just
actually
happened.
not.
You haven't? Oh, you're brand new. Okay.
There's,
This is my first year in
Yes.
a number of years. And so
Indeed.
are we expecting, I know you don't know, but,
don't know.
and I guess I would say to this board that given the fact that we do have more attention being paid to administration of the zoning ordinance, and I will say that the zoning ordinance is outdated and needs a lot of work, as well as the town ordinances. I mean, dating back to 1998, the world's changed.
Yep.
And the council, as a board, we should convey that to the council because we're going to be doing the work of straightening those out as different things come in. But I'm all for process, but I'm not sure that we're quite ready for trying to set up a schedule for, unless,
We're a town of 500. How many times are we going to meet?
you're looking for, I guess, if somebody comes in and says, okay, I want to do this, and you say the ordinance doesn't tell you to do that, you've got to have an application for the variance within 3 weeks.
What I was trying to address here was here's some dates. When do you want to try to have a meeting? And like in this example, this evening, we moved it to accommodate the applicant. So I mean, I don't mind playing scheduler, but what I was hoping for was to say, okay, if somebody makes the date third Wednesday on the third Wednesday in 2 months, that's when we're going to be meeting.
Okay.
And that gives you all notice. It gives them notice to process. If you all want to take them as they come, we'll take them as they come.
Okay. I'm kind of used to doing that, but at the same time, I would say that the town needs to drive the process of when the hearing occurs.
That's what I'm trying to do here
Okay.
is to say, okay, here's your deadline, and then you'll have your meeting, and then that way you all will know 2 months out that you're going to have a meeting.
Why don't you draft something up for us to consider at this
Okay.
continued session?
All
It's
right.
a little bit tough to kind of conceptualize this in the middle of a meeting, particularly when you've got a lot of paper in front of you that you've just seen for the first time, and you're trying to digest that and digest this concept of being a little bit more formal in the town of Urbana.
Well, and it might also provide more time for you to look at the paper, the packets that when we send those out. Yes.
I'm looking at the calendar. What about Wednesday,
Okay.
What about Tuesday, November 12th?
Can you do it right when we come back, when you come back from your trip?
Again, you're gonna ask us to take off more time from work when we just, I mean, we'll do what has to be done, but, you know, I work in a medical field, it's really hard for me to get off work when nurses are in short staffing, very hard.
If you want to participate by Zoom, we can offer that to you if that's helpful.
I just think there's possibly a lot to get done in a week's time. So I don't think next Wednesday
Yeah,
is
that
viable.
October 30 date is a little challenging for us, given trying to track down people like Mr. Kime, Ms. Gill, pull through the
And
records.
all the, yes.
So the 12th does not work?
We have a.
They'll
planning
make it
commission
work.
meeting. There's a planning commission meeting that night, isn't there?
So that was going to be one of the other items, was setting your next meeting. But then I also wanted to offer, because there have been changes, as Mr. Anzavino said, there have been changes in state code. I'm,
What about Wednesday, the 20th?
of November,
Is that Thanksgiving?
I don't want to put words in their mouths, but I think that you're looking to get it earlier rather than later.
Okay, well,
We're going to stay with, we're going to stay with the 12th. All right, so you'll want to, yes, at 6.
okay, so there'll need to be a vote. Okay.
I understand that. That was on my list. All right, so one of the other items is obviously setting up your next meeting to continue this matter. But I wanted to also ask you if you all wanted to consider, with or without any future cases, an evening that the council can come in and kind of brief you all up on the new information, new law changes with relative to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Sir, I would be up for that.
Okay. All right. How about we get through this first, and then we'll look at something maybe the beginning of the new year? Does that work? Okay.
So the 12th would be at 6 o'clock?
Yes, you'll need a motion to reconvene, to consider, because you've closed your public hearing, to consider this zoning matter.
Okay, so the planning commission has a meeting at 6 o'clock that evening?
On the
in
12th.
this room? Yeah.
Yes, you do. That 12th is not going to work. There's a conflict there with the planning commission.
Unless we could do it earlier.
I can't do it earlier.
Okay, never mind.
What is the 12th? Is it a Wednesday?
It's a
Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
What about the 13th? Would that even be better
What
for you?
about Wednesday, the 20th?
No, we already said. It's getting too
Wednesday,
close to
13th.
Thanksgiving.
How about Wednesday the 13th?
Yeah, that'll work for me.
I can't do that day.
I think they're just going to have to move forward, because we're getting really close to Thanksgiving after that. People will be traveling.
Thanksgiving is the 28th.
Why
20.
can't we do November the 20th?
All right, 20th. Does that work for y'all?
I don't know. I left my phone in
I
the car.
thought we were trying to get it done.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I do too, yeah, but the 12th is not going to work, because we do have a case for the,
What about the 14th? That's just next week.
Is that enough
Well, we've
time?
got to
No.
help you.
the only thing that,
Give us a chance.
I just don't know how long it's going to take to get the information.
It has to be re-advertised.
They've closed the public hearing.
I know.
We got to advertise the meeting. Yeah, we have to
Right,
advertise the
meeting
meeting.
has
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
advertised,
How about Monday, the 18th?
The meeting and the public hearing.
They closed the public hearing.
Yeah, they have to do another public hearing.
Why?
Why?
No, not if they're not going to take any additional public comment.
They have to, Ted. That was the change in the law.
There you go.
Jesus.
If I'd known that, we would, can they reconsider the motion to continue the public hearing?
I
We didn't vote, right?
can't advise the BZA, sorry.
I'm going to recommend that you reconsider closing the public hearing. And that way we can continue the meeting to a date and time and place. And if
And it
addition,
doesn't matter, we have to re-advertise. If it isn't voted on the night that it's advertised for,
okay,
we have to have a public hearing and then consider a vote.
okay. So it doesn't matter. We'll be re-advertising. We'll be re-advertising. So now let's go to the
Every
date.
other board used to continue. But I've ever
It
sat
change,
on,
change in law. Changing law.
doesn't make any decent logical sense.
Okay.
Is November the 20th available?
Is November the 20th available?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have no idea.
They all good for the 20th? Okay. All right, we're good for the 20th. November 20,
Okay.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. You want to have that made a motion? And that's all I've got.
Okay, do I have a motion for the meeting to be held on November the 20th at 6 PM?
What is the 20th?
It's a Wednesday.
Thank you.
Are we continuing the meeting or having a whole new meeting now?
Apparently, we're having a whole new meeting.
Okay.
Oh, we have,
Yeah, we have to re-advertise. We have to have another public hearing according to the town
I
attorney
don't think that's right.
and state code.
We don't have to redo everything, we just have to open up the floor for additional comments, if anybody has
Yeah.
additional comments.
Okay.
And for whatever you all discover.
Which will all be conveyed to you. So you'll have all that sent to you as we
Okay, so
uncover it.
you don't
we'll
have
send
to
it
get
out
up and
into the
present,
applicant.
you don't have to present it again. Okay, that's cool.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
But as we find the things that we're looking for, or that we don't find, we'll when we send it to you, we'll also send it to the applicant.
okay, so where do we stand? Where are we
Make a
looking,
motion to
motion to adjourn?
You voted on a motion for October, okay. Then we're good. Motion to adjourn then.
Okay,
We did, you made a motion, no one voted.
Oh, that's-
Everyone
okay, that's-
seconded, no one voted, or,
on the date?
Oh, and the new date?
Date.
hold on. Andrea, what's the next step? What do they have to vote on?
Ted, I would recommend that there be a vote on
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I left the podium. So all you've got to do is make a motion to set the next date which we said the 20th at 6 p.m. at this location.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Now we can adjourn.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So
Or do we
moved.
need it? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Mr. Riddick,
Well done.